the genesis of Color Creative was in 2014 when we decided that we were going to fund, produce, and develop these 3 half-hour comedy pilots by unknown creators, by unknown writers. And the whole idea was to say, we want to create a space that supports their voices, supports the work. And so we couldn't get, I remember we shopped around, we tried to talk to some brands, we met with some people in Hollywood, and everyone was like, oh, that's so cute what you're doing. So Issa decided to self-fund it. And she was like, fuck it, I'm just going to spend my own money and we're going to go and make these pilots. And so we did, and that was what the birth was of the company. And I remember being like, what are we calling this? And Issa was like, oh, I like the name Color Creative.
In this episode, we talk with Deniese Davis. Deniese produced several low-budget and digital films and currently is a producer on HBO series Insecure. She's also managing development for Issa Rae Productions and is the COO of Color Creative, which provides an access and opportunity for diverse and new voices.
This is Creative Disruption, the intersection where entertainment, data, and creativity meet. Here's your hosts, Ricky Ray Butler and Derral Leaves.
Welcome back to the Creative Disruption, where we talk about everything that's disrupting the industry. And I'm joined by my co-host, Ricky Ray Butler. How you doing, Ricky?
Doing great. Thanks for the intro again.
I always do the intro. So I did a little Twitter rant because that's what you do on Twitter, right?
Right.
And I was a little salty because I've been working closely with a partner manager at YouTube, and I made YouTube a ton of money, and I made a ton of money, and we had a great relationship. We'd meet, a couple times a month, and I thought the relationship was a little bit deeper than what it was. And no, wait, you just wait. And, we even met in person, and I was even making recommendations of,
so you were in the friend zone
and stuff like that. Oh, it was so friend zone. But what was really interesting was out of the blue, I'm like, hey, I'm ready to meet up at VidCon, love to connect, go over a few things that I'm really concerned about my channels. And as you know, I have quite a few channels that we own and operate, as a company, and a lot in the kids space. And so I wanted to really focus in on one of these channels that bring in a ton of views. And I get this nothing. It was like crickets for a month. And so I hit another email. Hey, I'd really like to connect. VidCon's getting a little bit closer. Crickets. Nothing happened. And then it was like three weeks later, after that second email, I get this: dear creator, we really appreciate your partnership, but it's time to move on.
And this is from your YouTube contact.
This is from my YouTube contact.
And she said creator.
It was like, dear creator. Now,
Uh-huh.
I understand the YouTube platform. I understand the partnership program. I understand that these partner managers are so overworked.
Sure.
And they have a ton of creators that they need to work with. But oh my gosh, like first off, I mean, there is technology to do a mail merge, right? It's just like, dear Derral, and that's all I needed. But it was like, dear creator, and it was so generic, and nothing happened. And I'm like, dude, what happened for the last 3 years of working together on multiple channels? Where was that relationship? And it was so cold and calculated. And I'm like, man, this is frustrating. So I did a little Twitter rant, and I did have some people at YouTube reach out and just wanted to know what was going on. I'm like, hey, you know what? Partner manager was unresponsive, and then for me, you're treating this like we're not really partners, like I fulfill the purpose and now we're moving on, instead of saying, hey, thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it. It's been great to see where you're at.
Have
it's
your
time
channels
to move on.
gone down in views?
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, I mean, they're up, from last year at this time. So, I mean, it has nothing to do with that. Cause what the partner program is basically, it gives them the opportunity to work with new creators, bring them up to speed, get a little bit more access to some beta things, which I really love. I love anything beta, just cause I can test it out, and I can test it on a lot of channels. And it gives some creators to be able to talk to someone at YouTube and kind of, voice some things. And I went on every training, and it's kind of odd because when I go into a training, they're like, oh my gosh, this Derral Leaves. And I do training videos on YouTube, on another channel. And it's just like, it's a little frustrating.
Well, across, your channels, like how many subscribers do you have collectively?
Probably 12, right around 12 million. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it can't be because you're not a priority because 12 million is huge.
Well, but I think YouTube's priority is something that I think is a really, really important priority. They need to diversify, who they're working with and bud the creators. I really think that's a huge issue. And literally, they don't have the manpower. Like seriously, how many people have across all their platforms 12 million subscribers and billions of views? There's a lot of people that are doing that, and they don't even have the manpower to do it. I think my only grief is that when you're developing a personal relationship, keep it a personal relationship. I mean, yes, I understand business, but man, this is a person business. And I can tell you this right now, Ricky, if there's any other platform that ever comes out, I will be the first adopter that will just jump on it, and I think right now Facebook's great. It's getting opportunity.
Are you on TikTok yet?
I do have some TikTok stuff going on, but it's like the thing that's interesting is when there's a viable competitor, and then right now there's not, because everything's feed driven, and when it's search driven and makes it easier for people to find content, that's when I think a lot of creators are going to exit for sure. So
right. Well, no, I agree. When there is a competing platform, that there's going to be a lot of creators that will exit. However, it's going to be very hard, I think, to compete with YouTube. I mean, they've been paying partners for over a decade now. When everyone else is kind of like Facebook, are just all like kind of dabbling in it.
Yeah.
And so I believe that, but there's a lot of complaints out there about YouTube and the YouTube platform, but no one has a solution of what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Because yes, they can prioritize other platforms right now, but there's no way that they're going to monetize to the level that they're monetizing. Well, maybe with merchandise they can, as well as with sponsorships. But when it comes to the YouTube partnership program where they have the rev share, there's no competing platform.
So 100% agree with you, but I also disagree with you. Like the platform that I feel like is going to come into it is Amazon. Now,
sure,
their video platform right now just is horrible. Like it's horrible.
Yeah, but Twitch is killing it.
Well, but
and there's a lot of people making a lot of money on Twitch.
But they own Twitch, and how hard would it be for the engineers there to clone Twitch and to create something that's a little bit closer to what we know as YouTube? And for me, I'm more interested with that because of all the integrated stuff. And you should be too, because you do all integrated brand deals, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, you see those sneakers right there? You can buy it right now. And then I get a percentage. I get a commission on anything. Plus anyone that subscribes to me, how they do Twitch, we could actually get $5 a month. I mean, that's huge when you're talking these types of numbers. And so, there's a lot of transactions. And one of the tactics I did a long time ago was for the piano guys. I don't know if you remember when I worked with them, but basically I tried to get them with all my heart to go and only get their music on Amazon. And they're like, no, we want to be on iTunes. I'm like, dude, like seriously, we can make a ton of money if we go to Amazon only. And they're like, well, why would we want to do that? It's only 99 cents. I says, yeah, it's true, but I can put this little affiliate code that goes on, and then anything that someone buys, anything that they buy, we can get a percentage of. So they didn't do it completely. They decided to go on iTunes. We still made 30 grand without selling any music on Amazon. Because people were going on. We had a video about Cello Wars, is like a Star Wars parody type thing, and people were going on and buying Chewbacca costumes for $800, and some people were buying refrigerators.
And because you had an Amazon affiliate link.
Exactly. And so I think Amazon is definitely a contender if they decide to do it. I think they're positioning right now to do it. They're getting really connected with influencers. The influencer program is 2 years old.
Sure.
And they're just kind of branching out. But I know.
And I think they're learning a lot from Alibaba. Alibaba makes hundreds of millions a year. I mean, and a lot of that's doing rev share. Billions a year.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's doing rev share with creators.
Yeah. And they the Amazon just introduced the live feature, so you can live stream and feature your products. I mean, QVC could be happening, but I think you're right. It's like you have to have something, you have to have a platform But you also need a diverse set of creators, because it's like if creators will come, their audiences will come. That's where the eyeballs will be.
So are you seeing a trend of creators leaving YouTube indefinitely and finding other revenue sources? Because I'm not.
Well,
and I think there's a lot of talk about it, but I don't think it's going to happen.
No,
anytime soon.
Well, I do see creators monetizing on other platforms,
sure,
and they're not putting all their eggs in the YouTube basket.
But if they're growing on another platform, let's say if they get huge on Twitch or if they get huge on Instagram or TikTok, the plan is always to end up on YouTube or eventually creating long form content and getting on an SVOD platform. But right now, I really don't think there's, when it comes to independent content creation, anything that's competing really strongly with YouTube. You have Twitch. Twitch is doing awesome, but it's a fraction.
Yeah, but it's
a
in its own
fraction of what
niche.
YouTube is, and it is niche. It is
gaming
for the most part.
Bob Ross, dude, they had a Bob Ross marathon on there. It was like one of the most watched live streams ever. But anyway, it's true, and I think so.
So are you trying to find other solutions?
Because
of that breakup letter was generic.
I would invest millions. To be in the right one, and I think it could be blockchain. I don't know. There's a lot of options out there.
So there's a lot of creators out there saying, "Hey, I am now going to be doing this blockchain platform." I think they probably get a big increase up front, but I don't think there's anyone that's sustaining their growth with a blockchain platform. Well, which, by the way, I'm a huge believer in blockchain.
Of course, like I know how much crypto. I don't know how much crypto. But you're always buying it like candy.
I was early on. I should have sold last. Well, was it last year? Like 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years ago.
I would have been very happy, but I ended up losing a lot as well. But
you can write that off.
But no, I believe that there's going to be a day where a content creator or a producer or a director will be able to use a blockchain platform and say, hey, I want to do Star Wars my way. Yeah. Or I want, that might be a little more difficult and complicated.
No, someone actually tried to do it their way and the video bombed.
Sure. But let's say they might take something like Lord of the Rings or another, franchise out there, say, hey, I want to do this my way. Followers, help me fund this. And I think there's going to get to the day where people can go fund it. They're actually going to invest in it through blockchain.
Absolutely.
And raise hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's when content is truly going to be decentralized. It's already decentralized today. But that's when film studios and TV networks are really going to be
the
scared.
writing's on the wall because, and this is really interesting because of our guest today, and I can't wait to chat with her for sure. But
so we got
to, but I got to make this point.
This is a really long banter.
But this is a really, really important point. Right. It's like when platforms are telling the creators what they can and can't create, and they say, oh, you can't create that because that's breaking whatever. And they're creating new terms and stuff because it's not advertiser friendly or whatever. That's when you have a huge disconnect. Because like what I believe and what you believe are not always in line. I mean, we debate all the time.
And I'm usually right.
You're so far from being right. All right. Well, anyway, I think that's a huge thing. But also, I truly believe that a lot of these corporations they take creators for granted, and they don't really understand the influence that they have. And I've seen creators crush companies, and in a good way, and then also in a bad way.
Sure.
And for me, it's like the creator is the gym, and wherever they're creating content and however they're using their creativity, the audience is going to follow.
Sure.
And whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Amazon, Twitch, Instagram or HBO, that's where they're going to go.
I think we have a perfect example of that. I mean, we've talked about how the digital creator world and the traditional creator world are clashing right now.
Right.
And we have with us today Deniese Davis, who is the producer of Insecure as well as the co-founder of Color Creative. And she has been a pioneer on both the digital side, but has also been able to take successes with digital content and apply it to other platforms like HBO.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for
Hey, how you
having
doing?
me. I'm doing well. Very much enjoying your banter, by the way. I have so many thoughts. And you were right. I definitely I wanted to chime in. I was like, oh, yes, I'll wait.
Well, please let us know what you think Derral said incorrectly. Because there's a lot of things.
Absolutely
where he was
nothing.
wrong.
Everything was thought-provoking. What are you talking about? It was amazing.
Listen, so she's an OG YouTuber. We're going to agree a lot more than you.
Hey, I was the one around then doing all the deals.
Okay, you did bring people money.
You guys weren't making
You
money
just never
10
brought
years
me
ago.
money. That's the problem.
Yeah. We'll talk about that later. Sidebar.
No, but we're really, really grateful that you're able to come on.
No, thank
And,
you, guys.
Could you just take a minute and share with our audience a little bit about yourself and kind of give a little bit of background?
Yeah, I'll do the spiel. I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada, born and raised. I got into video production in high school, so we could talk a lot about that because I think it has a lot of my ties to digital because we're talking about 2004, back when HD cams were going away and everything was becoming on SD cards. But I got into video production in high school. It piqued my interest, decided to go to college for film, which I didn't think was real. Went to Brooklyn College, CUNY in New York, majored in film production, minored in TV radio, had 12 internships, knew I wanted to be a producer, so I just hustled. And I came to LA to attend AFI, the American Film Institute, where I got my master's in producing. And I came out of AFI in 2012, which is when I saw the rise of digital happening while in all these 6 years of film school
Right.
and seeing the industry change. I was in film school during the 2008 writer's strike and, coming out of grad school right on the peak of the wave of digital and decided I was going to be a freelance producer because why waste my time going to be an assistant because I came out knowing how to make things. And so I met Issa Rae, produced Awkward Black Girl, translated it into Insecure, and there's a lot of stuff in between there in my freelance years because I mostly stayed in the digital space. So there you go. There's my
So if I get this right,
2-minute spiel.
From Vegas to Brooklyn,
Yes.
from Brooklyn to LA.
Yes.
Those are pretty extremes. I mean,
There's some drastic changes in life.
Well, I say, Vegas has no culture. So New York definitely helped me, definitely helped me mature and learn a lot about the world in a place like New York City.
Yeah,
And then, for me, I was always anti-LA. So I was like, I can't, never going to move to LA. And then obviously I was like, I kind of have to move to LA.
that's where the work is, right?
That's where the work is, where the opportunities are.
Well, really cool. So what was like an aha moment for you? Like here you're coming out of your master's program, and you've got a lot of schooling, in the industry. What was your aha program where the industry was going? Because it's like, it was clashing at the time and there's a lot of people, big broadcast studios that were trying to pull things back and you had independent creators trying to create their own stuff. Like,
Yeah.
when did it click for you?
So I never talk about this, but it's on my resume somewhere. But so in fall of 2011, we were talking about the YouTube channels, creating 100 channels, right, and investing $100 million. Right before that, about a month before that announcement went out, I got hired. I met a guy who had hired me to produce a short film from a client of his, and he was a manager mostly with social media influencers. And this is 2011, so
Wow, that's
the
early,
term is
yeah.
very, very early. I don't even know if he called it that then, but one of his clients was actually Michelle Phan.
Got it.
And at the time, in 20.
Is this Richard Fries?
Yes, that is my guy. I love
I
Richard.
remember him,
Yes,
yeah.
he's a really good dude. And we
He's
somehow,
not doing the same thing anymore,
No,
right?
he's not. Completely out the business. But we had met early on and we kept in touch. And finally, he called me up and said, "Hey, I have this thing," and completely trusted me still in grad school, but said, "I need a producer to do this short film for my client." And honestly, my introduction to Michelle was through Richard because I didn't know. I was like, "Well, who is she?" And I looked her up and I was like, "Oh, she's like." Millions of views on YouTube, all these makeup tutorials, but she had wrote a short film and she wanted to direct it and be in it and for her channel. And it was very revolutionary at the time, especially for her because she was a YouTube creator not known for doing that kind of content. And so he needed to pull in someone who could produce scripted. And so I came on board and did this project with them. And they had actually, the money used was from a brand sponsorship. And we shot it in a day and it was a great time. But I remember sitting down with him and he's the one who actually tipped me off and said, "Yeah, YouTube came to us, they're trying to do these MCNs and trying to do these channels." And that was really my aha moment because I'm on set, I'm with this YouTuber who I'd never heard of before. But then once you discover them, you're like, holy shit, like they have an audience, like they have influence and power and an audience and these eyeballs. And that was after, especially being at that point 5 years into like film schooling, just this awareness that something else was happening, right? And not really sure like what it is, but it stayed with me up until 6 months later when I'm graduating, and all my colleagues or my fellows were like, yeah, I'm gonna go apply to this job, I'm gonna go work in an agency, and I was like, I think I'm gonna go and produce in this space.
I'm gonna do these YouTube
stuff. Because I just saw that there was money there and influence, and again, just these creators
and demand for producers.
Yeah, the bandwidth for producers, and that was the thing, is I was basically a skilled line producer, and so I also had seen a couple of my other fellows a year before me go and start doing work with Awesomeness, and so you just see this shift happening, and very slightly. Again, we're 2011, 2012 are really the early days, and early days because it only really lasted 2-3 years after that. But but that was the moment that I just knew something else was happening, and you could see not the resistance, because I think it's interesting when you talk about the industry that it came from an investment from YouTube. Right? Like they knew ahead of everyone else, because you didn't see the convergence yet of real money being spent. The studios weren't the ones putting down that money. It wasn't brands. It was YouTube saying, well, we're going to reinvest in our creators and we'll kind of prove a point to people who are looking at it.
And YouTube, like, and to their credit, they don't necessarily talk about all the money that they give to, building up the platform. And that was like a huge investment at the time. And it created a lot of buzz with people. Hey, we can actually make money. This is like 2011, when the partner program was just really getting adopted. And then in 12, when it was opened up to everyone, it says, hey, look at this. You can make money and you can do integrated brand deals and you can have this partner share and so on and so forth. But they do that around the world. Like right now, they have an effort like in Indonesia and in Asia to fund creators for a year, to employ them for a year to create content so they can actually get enough money to do it. And it's crazy.
But it's so smart.
They never talk about it. And there's a lot of good things that YouTube doesn't talk about. Yeah. That's one thing that they did, is that they do a great job seeding creators to help build the platform in the areas where they're weak.
Absolutely. Well, and people don't realize it's what started or kind of launched a lot of the MCNs that later got sold for billions of dollars, right? The Machinimas and the Awesomeness TVs and like all of these companies.
Close their doors.
Or close the doors, exactly.
That's another subject.
But that's kind of was their seed investment in some ways, and they were able to kind of capitalize and build from there. So
yeah. So it's very interesting, like how you like stumbled into the space, and I remember those feelings of like, okay, there's something going on here. I remember browsing YouTube and just thinking, why are all these teenagers getting thousands and thousands of views? This doesn't make sense. All they're doing is just talking to the camera. Like, what in the world's going on? And then, I had a very similar experience where, I started dabbling, or I tested it, and it's like, whoa, this really works.
Absolutely. Well, so, God, I never want to say this on a podcast.
Yeah, but guess what? It's being recorded. Let's go ahead right now.
But to your point, when I was in college in New York City in about 2008, a friend of mine, this is when MySpace was the biggest social platform. This is prior to Facebook. I think I had a Facebook account, but wasn't really on it.
Facebook was for the cool people back then.
Exactly. Well, it was like very like college focused. MySpace was like, it got me into coding and all these things. But my friend and I, we created a YouTube show similar to that. It was just the two of us talking in my bedroom on the computer and just talking about our days. And we initially
was on YouTube, or was it on MySpace?
It was on MySpace. We used MySpace video platform, and we would get thousands of views and a lot of like we actually had a little MySpace following, and we were like, what is this? And
before the time,
and we had uploaded one video, I think the first 2 episodes on YouTube only a few months later. And I joke now, and I'm always like, guys, if we were just smart enough and just use YouTube, we'd be YouTube.
See the crystal ball to see where things are going.
I was like, I'd be a YouTube star. Like, what am I talking about? But it was just fascinating, and not doing it intentionally as much as it was just experimentation, right? Yeah. You're just like, oh, there's these video platforms, we can make videos, put them out there for our friends to watch, and you just didn't know what was going to happen.
It was hard to know, how to monetize it, especially for from the perspective of a creator back then.
Yeah.
I mean, is this just a fun friend project, or is this a business that you're building?
Well, and that's the thing, is because it hasn't been done before. I don't even know if you were thinking about monetization unless you were getting the millions of views and being like, wait a second, like what, like how do I make money off of this? Because initially people were just doing it. Like I remember the Chris Crocker videos. I don't know if those are one of the first, the shoes like music video. Like those are one of the first early viral videos, and people would be like, hey, look at at this. Have you seen this? And like those early like viral annotations that were like nothing, like literally just someone being like, I don't know, let me cry in front of a camera about Britney Spears and tell people, you know, how I feel. And it resonated with people in such a way. And it just, I don't know, it really was the beginning of the decentralization, I think, of finding what it means to create content that relates to other people, right? Without the filters of a studio.
Now here's a question, and this is something I know a lot of producers, when they've gone through school, especially getting a master's degree, they would do is like, you see the handheld shot with a phone, and it's all shaky, you know, but yet it still works.
Yes, you know.
And was that hard for you to see that transition, or?
Not really. I mean, especially not now when I look back, because I point to Awkward Black Girl. I wasn't around for season 1. I came in season 2. And when I've done workshops and talk about producing for the web, one of the things I use as an example is if you look at season 1, episode 1, she didn't have any money. She had a friend hold the camera who had never held a camera before. And you see the quality of those first 3 episodes before she raised money on Kickstarter to have a real budget and a real production team. Those first 3 episodes was just her friend, like no boom, right? And so very subpar quality. However, it related to people, right? Like that first episode is what went viral and what started this web series. And so when you look at that, you say, oh, you can like get around the quality if the story or if the relatability is there in some way. And that was such a great case study for me because it was like, oh, like it was funny. You know, like everyone got around the look of it because you just, I don't know, like you kind of are deconditioning people to look at film in a different way where it's just like, okay, is it really about how it looks or is it about what you're watching?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Well, I think, you know, YouTube and a lot of the social platforms, I mean, really showed entertainment and mainstream entertainment what people really want.
Yes.
I mean, look at gaming, look at beauty. I mean, there's a, you know, short form skits. Like there's a lot of things that were just exploding online because no one else. No TV network was offering
because
that content.
the whole point is here you had people in the room saying, this is what we're going to give the people. This is what they need to watch.
Yeah.
And it flipped it on its head.
And now it's very data driven.
And now it's just like, no, it's like, it's more this. I'm going to make content and people are going to gravitate to what they want to watch. Instead of you telling them what to watch, they're going to find what they want to watch.
Sure.
And that switch is key. And so, you know, I know right now you have a series on HBO that you're doing. I want to talk about that because that's really interesting.
Before we go there, what was the evolution from YouTube to HBO?
Oh, wow. The evolution. So 2012, we started season 2, which was funded by I Am Other, which was Pharrell Williams' YouTube channel, which got money from the YouTube investment.
Right.
So look at that connection there. And so he dumped a bunch of money into season 2. The finale aired in February 2013. It did really well. And at the time, the first show Issa actually ever developed was a pilot for ABC Studios with Shonda Rhimes. And she had developed it in the traditional networks, like development season pilot. And it didn't get greenlit to pilot. It actually, we'll come back to this, it's what started Color Creative, was that her experience in the traditional model. And she came back to me and was like, that shit's trash. It's very archaic and old school, and I don't understand why they develop shows this way. And HBO called her up and said, we heard that you're free now. Do you want to come in and pitch something? And so she pitched them Insecure in April of 2013. And it took 2.5 years from that point of her just writing the pilot script with Larry Wilmore and waiting, hoping for a pilot green light. And so there's this dearth of, I'd say, about 3.5 years where Issa just kept creating content and just it would call me up and say, I wrote a sketch. Can we do it for $500? And we'd go and shoot it on a Saturday. We did a few other web series, some other YouTube channels that were funding content, and just kept creating content. This was my freelance years that I spoke of before Insecure really kind of got off the ground. And so I will say, though, once it got greenlit to pilot, it was just nonstop from that point forward.
Wow, visionaries. I mean, waiting on for like the big opportunity to happen, but you just had to keep working and keep trying to make other things happen.
Yeah, well, because you realize Hollywood is just slow. Like, you know, like if you wait around for someone to really give you that opportunity, it's like it could have not been HBO. It could have probably been another network, right? It's the same way that initially we thought ABC was going to be like the big jumping off point, and that didn't go the way it should have went. And rightfully so, though. Issa looks back and then always talks about how she's kind of thankful that show didn't end up getting greenlit, because when she took a step back, she realized it became something that didn't feel like it was her voice any longer.
Right.
And that's important, because it led to what Insecure was.
I think that's a main point of what I was making earlier. It's like, you have people telling you this is what you can do and this is what you can't do. Create within these, this confines.
Absolutely, and especially for a network, because advertisers are all behind those broadcasts, right? Like it's just like, it's not that they're saying like creatively this is what you can and can't do. They're like, this is what our advertisers don't want.
And it's tough. But then you go to HBO and they're like, do they even talk to you?
No, HBO, especially having developed them with the years now, they are so great creatively, because they want your voice. They want the authenticity, right? They lean into, people who have something to say, and people who have a very unique perspective. And it does feel like, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it does feel like an evolution of like the greatest version of what YouTube could be on a streaming platform, right? Or on a premium platform, I should say. Sure. And that's just because they don't filter. The only disadvantage, I'd say, is HBO doesn't program very often. Yep. And therefore they have a lot of things that are in development for a very long time. And, I wrestle with that, because on the positive side, you end up getting the best work, right? They really spend their time, like we said, Insecure was in development for 2.5 years. They really spend their time making sure something is as good as it can be and is that spotless. They don't rush the process. And so you can't, it's very different than YouTube when you're just like, let me make a video and it's there.
well, yeah, but man, like HBO, like for how long have they been around? Like they just keep winning.
Yeah.
And so it might be because of that process of making sure that they hear your voice and making sure that it's something that is coming from the artist in its purest form. Because if you look at HBO shows compared to a lot of the other networks, HBO usually has more successful shows.
Yeah.
I don't know that for a fact, but it seems that way. It seems like they're
definitely
popular shows.
A contender there. I mean,
and they're the ones that came out with one of the first binge-worthy shows, which was Sopranos.
Yeah. I just look at it this way. It's like there's different goals that people have, and it's literally about the speed. I do believe. I think that what's changing now is how fast can we watch it. I know that Game of Thrones, like people were waiting between seasons to watch the content, and they would have watched a lot more if there was more content that was given to them.
And that's why theory videos on YouTube were exploding.
Exactly.
Because people couldn't get their Game of Thrones fix. They'd either keep watching the other seasons all over again, or they'd go and just go in those rabbit holes on YouTube and binge watch. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what.
or those Game of Thrones facts, profiles on Instagram. I don't follow those. I mean, is one of those things where it created its own vertical online.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing, is the pacing of getting content out. And I think that I think HBO is putting out some amazing quality content. I think Netflix just throws things out and just spews it out. And every once in a while, there'll be some really, really good shows. But other than that, you have Amazon that's a good contender now that are putting out some amazing series. But I really do believe, I do believe this in my heart, even though that I was ranting and salty against YouTube, is like when they can level up on that side in the sense of creating better quality content that's consumed more like this, I think it's game over. Because just the eyeballs and the visibility, if it's not behind a paywall, is going to be just damaging.
That's it's so funny. That was one of my biggest gripes with YouTube Red, then YouTube Premium, and then YouTube whatever, and then it's no longer exists. But was this idea that
I think it does, but
they take your money.
I think it's specialized.
They get rid of the ads. That's about it.
I think specifically for I think music and sports, right?
Yeah, which is what they're shifting to.
It is,
actually, they're like, oh, this is where our audience is for that space, so we'll do that because
Ariana Grande that has over 140 million followers that doesn't make a lot of content.
Yeah.
So it's a way of leveraging those huge audiences.
But I was so fascinated by the decision because coming as someone who came up through YouTube, I kept looking at their space and saying, well, I don't understand how you're going to create a paywall for content on a channel that has always been free and that is primarily accessible and primarily used by a teenage, preteen audience, right? Yeah. One of the biggest audiences they have is that the 13 to 18 demographic, even as low as
And
9
they're,
as
and
kids,
they're the ones
right?
that are going to go find it where they can get it for free.
Well, exactly, because they don't have a credit card, and the last thing I wanted to go do is say, "Hey, Mom, will you pay for this?" And they're just like, "What are you watching on there?" You know, because it's it's so limitless. And so that was always my biggest thing, where I was like, "Well, that's dumb, because if you were going to do that, you should have done it at the very beginning." But no one knew that, and I just thought it was interesting. But to your point, you know, I wonder, has YouTube gotten too big to be able to scale back and say, "Okay, let's figure out how to streamline or create a different point of access just for content to compete with the Amazons of the world."
I think they're smart enough that they can do it. The only difference was when creators, and this is the disconnect, is when creators make certain type of content and you put them in a different type of content to create, and they don't know how to create that content, and you're surrounded by producers that know how to create the content, but that's where the creator loses their voice.
Yeah.
And I've never seen, I think Cobra Kai is the only series that was just one that I wanted to watch and look forward to watching, you know, from season 1 to season 2. But any original series, I don't even think, like, seriously, I don't even think there's one that I'd even liked.
Yeah.
You know, and it all comes back down to, yes, there's a lot of money. Yes, there's a lot of money in the production, but I truly believe that the creators lose their voice because they're not used to running a 10 camera shoot or having all the stuff that's going on. And
and half of the time they don't need it, and that's the disconnect too. Is that you just assume that you have to make a creator evolve into a premium space, when in reality, like we talked about Awkward Black Girl, it's like that could have lived on for seasons, and no one probably would have really cared if it didn't look like it did on TV, because they were like, I don't see this on TV.
Exactly.
This is funny. This is relatable. I see myself in this content. Excuse me, and I think that's the same for a lot of other YouTube creators. They are building an audience and a following because they're speaking to something that people feel like they're not finding elsewhere in a lot of ways.
But they have the stars. I mean, I look at it from this thing is they have the star power, and there's a lot of people wanting for them to create more content. And it's just like, you take an A-lister Hollywood actor and put him against a bigger YouTuber, and it's like not even comparatively close.
No, not
you
at
know,
all.
the engagement is off the charts. And I have teenagers, and they don't watch movies. I mean, they might watch a Marvel movie every once in a while or something like that. They don't watch TV, but they do consume YouTube.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
That's all they consume.
I have a 9-year-old niece who now has grown up since 2010. She was born in August 2010, so she's part of my digital journey. But she's grown up watching YouTube, right? Like, I see her maneuver her iPad in a way that I'm just like, I don't
Didn't even know
understand.
it.
And watching stuff and having conversations with me about stuff she's watching that I'm just like, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is. And, but it's an amazement, because I have to have an adult conversation with her where I'm like, how are you finding this? And she's just click, 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 click.
It's
and then finds
amazing.
the things that she loves and knows how to go back to it later.
My
AI is so good.
My
Yeah.
3-year-old can navigate the YouTube app better than I can.
Yeah.
I mean, well, she knows how to do certain things that I don't know how to do either. I mean,
That's not saying much, Ricky.
well, no, it doesn't. Stop it. But going back to YouTube, trying to get into that premium content. Personally, I think they're killing it when it comes to daytime or like unscripted. If you think about it,
Reality tapes.
So you see all these like podcasts, like for example, Joe Rogan or H3H3. The numbers that they're getting and the engagement that they're getting is putting a lot of daytime shows to shame. And I think it's going to be a replacement of a lot of daytime content out there. And then you see Ellen. When she uploads to YouTube, it goes crazy. Or Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel, which is, I think, some of the reasons why they beat the Lenos and the Lettermans back in the day is because they adopted this platform, and the algorithm is really benefiting those types of shows. And I think that trend is going to continue. But in order to get to like the scripted content and to thrive there, one thing when YouTube went into YouTube Premium or YouTube Red, they kind of, I believe, was disregarding their history. Their history
100%.
Their history was decentralization of content, where they were taking a very centralization approach. And also a lot of people are on that platform to consume as much content as quickly as possible. And they wanted to go toe to toe, apples to apples with the SVOD, streaming platforms. In order for them to get to that area, I think what's going to happen, and I think this would be kind of cool, if they were to acquire one of those huge SVOD platforms. Let's say if YouTube acquired Netflix, which would be a crazy huge acquisition. Which
It almost gives me a headache just because of the Netflix content that's everybody has.
Well, so this is the thing. It might improve both worlds. So think about it. Netflix obviously does have a handle on getting some good content out there, like Stranger Things. Maybe what would happen is
name another series real quick. Hurry.
House of Cards.
Bright.
You have two. That's all they have. They have two.
No, there's a good handful.
No, it's actually like 4.5.
But with that said, they're killing it. They're still growing.
Right.
And so if it could be one of those things that could like tie back to YouTube, and then YouTube would have an algorithm like, okay, this content that's being produced or created on YouTube should now start surfacing into like Netflix. Like, I mean, where you kind of like let it do its own thing, but it could be another way of like making so Netflix is more consistent and gets a lot more good content and a bigger variety of content. Yeah. I mean, I think an acquisition like that is what would really make this work.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about, and I was dying to bring this up earlier in your debate, but Quibi? Have you guys talked about Quibi? I know you've talked about Quibi. Because to your point, that is the only thing that I'm like, but then there's like, it's just, there's a lot of things. But I could foresee a future where, if anything, Quibi is designed and developed to be acquired and to be sold into a different ecosystem somehow.
Right.
Like I see that, like I was like, I can't see this becoming its own YouTube, but I could see this leading its way into what YouTube wanted to do in short form premium programming, right? And in the mobile space, but also just more so about just the quick bites. Ugh, I hate that, but the quick bites. But think about, like, in my mind when I saw the announcement of Quibi, I was like, oh, this is what YouTube should have been doing for a lot of their premium content creators, right? Like allowing a separate space that really kind of puts them on a platform and promotes their work, but also allows them to continue to do what they're doing. The downside with Quibi is that it is very centralized and Hollywood in a system of like, we're gonna spend a lot of money making like splashy, highly produced content, but with all these celebrities, but will people watch?
From a brand integration, product placement perspective, we're already getting ready to start testing a lot of stuff on Quibi. I mean, we're on all the platforms, from Quibi to Apple to a lot of the different SVODs. My personal opinion, they have the right team. They have some very strong entertainment executives, but my question is, are they platform executives? They know how to create content and do all the content deals, and it seems like they have a good roster of content coming on. But my question is, are they really going to be able to grow and compete with the other platforms out there? Do they know who they need to be targeting and how to target them? Is their content relevant to that audience? And I guess my question is it going to be successful, or is it going to be one of those things where they're going to be forced to selling their content to another platform?
They're going to be forced. And the reason why they're going to be forced is because Gen Z, they want certain type of content. And I can tell you, I spend so much time trying to figure out what they want, because that's the main consumer of online video, right? And I can tell you that they like the shows that they like the creators that they like, and the people that they're pulling in right now, like it's a disconnect, you know, it's a disconnect with that audience. And those are going to be the early adopters. Those are the ones that are going to be, hey, this is really cool.
Look at Snapchat. Look at all these other video platforms that did well, but it's because they were able to target the audience. And I also, my argument for Snapchat, the old Snapchat, was always that.
The old
Snapchat before the old people got into there.
But it was because it was a creator-enabled platform in some ways, right? It allowed Generation Z to take a thing and say, oh, let me document my daily life and like have fun with these filters and watch other people's videos throughout their day, which was, like Instagram tried to adopt that feeling, but it was almost like this version of social media meets YouTube for people just every day, right?
Yeah,
like and allow them to just create their own content in a weird way, whether that looks like. Yeah,
and the issue with Snapchat is I think they're slow moving. On really catering to the content creator. Yeah. And then I think they put a lot of betting into having a centralized approach, creating their own original content. Yeah. When really they should have really been focused on empowering the content creators that were there. Because, like for example, when our company, we spend tens of millions of dollars a year on doing integrations, when we saw that Instagram started, their stories, and then that they had a swipe up option, we immediately took all of the focus from Snapchat and put it over to Instagram because we could, have more data and we can, measure, from views to conversions or to clicks even. And that's something that you couldn't do on Snapchat. And it took Snapchat a while to figure out like, oh, whoa, there's a lot of engagement slowing down here. And I think it's because people are monetizing better on Instagram.
Well, that
and they're able to grow their other audiences through Instagram as well.
And like you said, Snapchat was slow. And then they were also very much like, oh, let's get scripted content in here.
Yeah, how does that work out?
Let's do what the other people are doing. And really, and I think that's a principle in business that everyone needs to realize.
Yeah.
Look at what's working.
And innovate.
Optimize and innovate and make it scale even further.
Yeah.
And so like for example, you see all these different businesses that have these startup CEOs that just think, oh, I want to do 1,000 different things all at once. Those are the businesses that sometimes fail and end up not being very successful in the end. And it's because they lose their focus. They stop being in touch with what their consumers or what their audience wants, and they go down a path that's not data driven, but maybe they think it is data driven, but it's
they're
obviously
looking at the wrong data.
They're looking at the wrong data, and they should be looking at what's happening and what's being successful there, and making that their first priority. There was a time where there's someone at Snapchat that mentioned to me that they didn't see themselves as like a social network, or they saw them as technology for cameras.
That is so awesome. Whoever said that should have been fired.
Wow.
There's a panel where we're talking about this, and a former client of ours, felt very passionately that they were a technology for a camera.
There we go.
And I was just like, if this is something that's really coming from Snapchat, they have lost their way.
They were like, no, Samsung's going to buy us out. We know. We got
that deal going on.
So strange.
Yeah, so being that you guys have been successful with Insecure on HBO,
yes.
Do you guys feel like you have more clout and more, I guess, empowerment to do things faster?
Secure?
Are you more secure? I like that pun. Yes, it's an interesting journey, right? I think so. We have a show that the trailer just dropped on Sunday. New HBO show. It's actually our next show after Insecure through the HBO deal, called A Black Lady Sketch Show. That will be revolutionary in its own way because it's written, produced, starring, directed, and created by all Black women, and it'll premiere on HBO on August 2nd.
That's awesome.
Oh,
And the trailer just dropped
Congrats.
on Sunday. Thank you, and was really, really buzzy. And so a lot of celebrity guest stars, but also just this idea that a sketch show like this has never existed on television ever, right? And it will be our follow-up on our HBO deal, and that's exciting in the fact that we're even able to do a show like that there, right? And be able to say this is what we want to do, and Issa really kind of championing that, and them allowing it. And so I think it has been 3 years of being there and trying and developing numerous other shows that are just in the HBO development purgatory, and that at some point will move along. But we've seen as we go out to market with, especially on the feature side, people are dying for us to get in features. And so we're really trying to take advantage, I think, of the opportunity we have. But I think with the thing I respect and the reason why I've worked with Issa so long is that she is still creator first. She's still very writer centric and is always thinking of how do we disrupt and create opportunities and access for not just ourselves, but for all the other creators we've met along the way, because they're just as talented. But historically, they've met just, if not the same, if not more barriers than we have, right? In terms of crossing over into scripted and into the Hollywood system, who traditionally looks at digital and looks at YouTube content as like they're too green, or they don't, they don't know our way of doing things. And it is hard, right? It's a transition that is a learning curve that I think honestly took us about a year just by Insecure alone, figuring that out. And then once we figured it out, we were like, oh, we got this. And I joke now when people kind of look at our, we actually have 2 production companies. And so when they, the Color Creative and Issa Rae Productions. And so when people ask us to define our genre, our brand, and I say, well, hey, we're genre agnostic. Like, just because we have Insecure or Black Lady Sketch Show doesn't mean we're only doing comedy. We're just looking for great storytellers. And we also look at ourselves as a company as kind of revolutionaries in the sense that neither of us came up through the agency world. We didn't start as an assistant and grow in Hollywood and then launched our production companies with all these contacts. I was like, we look at the way you guys are doing things very differently, right? We look at it as outsiders, and I coined the term Un-traditionalist because I'm like, guys, we came from the digital space. We came from not having any restrictions. And so when we look at a model or a development system, we're like, why do you, that's so silly. Like, why do you do it that way?
Because we've been doing that way for 100 years.
Right? But you're just like, but you also see the resistances change, right?
Yeah,
you see them, like, I mean, look at what's happening in the OTT space just now after they were like, we'll let Netflix do their thing. And then after a while, they're like, oh shit, if we don't create our own space, then we're going to get beat with these guys. And it was a very day and old Hollywood approach of like, let's sit back and watch them fail or watch them like beat us, and then we're gonna figure out how to do it and do it better, right? And so we're just in this really weird in between space where we talked about the convergence of industries that I'm probably most excited for, given my background, because I'm like, I tell people, we don't really know what the future of entertainment is truly going to look like in this space until the rest of these OTTs launch. We have about 3 or 4 of them. And, I feel like one gets announced every month. They all have tentative launch dates, but it's going to be about 2 years before they're all out there. And once they're all out there, what are their audiences? Who's watching? How are they promoting their own brands? And they don't know. They don't know.
I guarantee you this. There's a lot of money that's going to be lost.
Oh, 1,000%.
A lot.
Well, that, and I was like, who's going to be the winners and who are going to be the losers? Because
there's only
they can't all be successful.
There's only so many eyeballs.
Exactly.
And where are they going to come on?
Well, that, and there's a point where the average consumer, when they look at their bills and say, I'm paying $200 for like 20 OTT subscriptions when I only watch 2. Exactly. I don't want that, right? Because now the whole reason why I cut the cord was because of the lower cost. And now you're forcing a consumer to really pick and choose where they want to watch content. And what if their favorite show like Insecure, because it's only on HBO, will they keep HBO year in, year out once Insecure is off the air, right? Or will they say, well, let me keep the $12 a month and just see what else they have? And if the content's not there for them, they won't stay attached. And so I do wonder, and it's TBD, but it's like, will OTTs become just moving into the niche market space, right? Because it's like, that's the only way I think you're going to truly capture a consumer-facing audience in a way of like saying, let's build, BET finally just announced an OTT app, and I was like, guys, you're the only ones who have had this audience for who knows how long, and no one's been able to beat you, but now you're so slow to get out the space, because I joke and say, well, Insecure or in Atlanta should have been on a BET, but you guys didn't have a platform to have this premium content, and on top of that, you were still connected to cable and not in the digital space, right? So, anyways, I can rant about this forever, but
there's a lot of networks right now in broadcast.
Oh yeah.
That, people aren't talking about this, and I'm not going to mention any numbers that I know. But
that's total Ricky. People talk about this, but I'm
not going to say anything.
But no. There's a lot of different TV networks that are seeing more views on their streaming platforms.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah,
on their own branded streaming platforms that I never heard of before.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those things where BET, they definitely should be getting on this or making a partnership. With one of the other networks.
Speculative. It's like, our Nielsen ratings this, and
Nielsen has just been
survey 10 people, right? But digital, you can see who consumes it, how long they consume it, where they jump off, if they come back frequently. There's all this data that they're able to do. And so, of course, they're going to have more viewers, because what was said before was all speculative.
It's so true.
It's not
you can't beat the precision of what the numbers and the data is going to tell you, which is also why I think you'll be able to find an audience much more easier. But then the truth is how do you create this entire platform with hundreds, if not thousands of hours of content catered to an audience and say, what do you want to watch here? You know what I mean? Because all of them are launching with their IP. They're all going to be built on their IP. Disney, Warner Brothers, all of them. So
let's take a step back.
And it has to all be on demand.
Yeah.
Because I remember, was it The Walking Dead when it first came out, or was it?
The Walking Dead.
Oh,
I used
goodness.
to miss
or maybe it was Breaking Bad. But I remember just looking online, where can I watch this on demand?
The Walking
And it was
Dead got a lot of
impossible.
my money because I used to miss the live viewing because it was on a weekday, and
You got it.
and the only place I could watch it was I had to rent it on Amazon. So I'd rent the $1.99 for every episode I'd miss,
Right.
and there was a point
But it
where
was worth it, though.
It was worth it. And at the end of the season, I was like, damn it, I should have bought the season pass because I didn't realize every episode I was renting to catch up. It's fine. It's fine.
So back to VET, and I think this is a
Yes.
really important point. So they have a massive catalog of great content, and it's niche driven. And I look at it. Okay, let's start our own platform and go that direction. But why haven't they been doing anything like on YouTube? I look at WWE. They get almost 1 billion video views a month. I mean, translate that for a minute.
Yeah.
1 billion, and yet it just seeds for all the stuff that they're doing, and it just baffles me that they don't even do that.
Yeah, well, it's the same as almost like MTV, right? Where I
Right.
was just like, I don't know, MTV should emerge with awesomeness when you had the chance
Yeah.
because that's where your audience went, right?
Yeah.
And so with BET especially, I really don't know where the disconnect was because they've
Which I
never
think they
been.
acquired them, right?
Yeah.
Viacom acquired Awesomeness.
Wait, that was
Yeah,
who they
that's-
eventually
yeah,
sold to,
yeah,
right? Okay,
yeah,
but
so in
also
a way,
for
I
like,
guess they're kind of
for like a
merged.
There
quarter,
you
but
go.
also, and then they're
It's
like,
a little too late.
yeah, and a little too late, like and also
yeah,
for a quarter
for sure.
of the
Oh, for sure.
of their value that they were. It's very petty. But BT, it's like I don't know where the disconnect was. Where I don't know if they were just didn't know the digital space and how to move that. But it's also the same way I look at them, where only in the last 2 or 3 years is when they finally got into scripted content, right? So you kind of are just like, I don't know, BT, what were you doing for the last decade? When everyone's moved into scripted, they're kind of the last people to get into it. And personally, I don't necessarily blame the network as much as I look at the bigger corporation structure and look at Viacom and say, well, I just don't think you knew what to do with any of these brands. And you
Yeah.
let them kind of just sit there for this since the 2000s, honestly, because you look at what MTV kind of how like they declined as well in terms of just like losing that audience, losing their core brand. And you just kind of go, what the fuck? Like you guys were ahead of the curve and you should have been able to transition.
And that's the whole thing is like just saying, oh, you can only see our stuff on our platform. That needs to change because you're going to die when that happens.
the resistance to that, yeah.
Exactly. Because it's like, no, we should be on Snapchat. We should be on Instagram. We should be on YouTube. We should be on Facebook. We got to be to the audience where they're at. And then for them to get the premium stuff, guess where they need to go?
Guys, I mean,
To the
look at
platform.
and look at HBO. I think HBO is like the best case study for that because they did it in the right way, right? When they launched HBO Go, HBO Now, first of all, people were like, I don't get the difference. And then secondly,
I still don't get the difference.
but then secondly, they launched at a time before anybody else was out there. I mean, you only had Netflix and Hulu, and then I think Amazon had just got into the video space, but they launched knowing that, okay, if we keep our audience trapped in the subscription cable space, like we're going to die, right? We're going to be eaten up by our competitors, by Netflix or whoever. And so they launched their own OTT space, which was like the smartest thing for a smaller premium cabler to do for subscription base because it was like Showtime didn't have that yet. Stars didn't have that yet, right? And so I think they were smart when they got into it because now they have so much more leverage with their shows.
Yeah.
And like even Game of Thrones, I'm just like, if you didn't have that, you would have like lost so much of that.
It'll be interesting to see how long their partnership with Amazon lasts. Because I mean, I do Amazon so I can get both HBO and Showtime.
Oh yeah, well you can have it's like Hulu now. They all have the add-on
Yeah.
subscriptions,
Yeah.
but there's a point where they're going to say no. It's just our thing.
It's good enough.
Yeah, but I also wonder how much the rise of like the Sling TVs and the other OTT bundlers will do, and even Roku to a certain extent. I actually joked to someone. I was like, guys, I'm in the wrong space. I should have got into the platform space because that's the true competitive nature. It's like Roku, Apple TV, and Google and Fire Stick. That's it, right?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
was like, man, someone needs to come up with the all-in-one place because there's going to be so many apps now that
But you'd miss
can't
the
host it.
creation though, like the creative process.
I'd be like facing these
Okay,
people
now we
who
got
are
to
like,
create something.
right. Yeah, it's just
I mean, one thing I want to do before we wrap up is, talk to you about. I looked at the camera. Sorry, everyone. Sorry. I screwed that up.
You're like,
I called myself out. Daryl always tells me not to look at the camera, and I just did it.
Not to look at the camera?
So tell us more about Color Creative, like, how you guys were inspired to start that and how that's going. And I think I introduced you the wrong way. I think I said Color Creative Foundation, which sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Ricky
I mean,
likes to add
add
certain
to things.
to everything.
That's fine. I will accept that. There will be a foundation one day. Who knows?
Okay.
So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but essentially the idea was born out of Issa coming through that ABC development space, right? She was like, it's archaic, it's just awful, it doesn't support your voice and doesn't support creators. And she came to me and said she had read a woman's web series script that got sent to her that she read and thought it was hilarious and was like, this should be a pilot though, and came to me and said, could we shoot this as a pilot? And I was like, yeah, as a half-hour comedy, like it's a short film, like we can go take 50 grand and go shoot it as such, right? And call it a pilot. And so she was like, okay, let's think on that some more. And then came to me and said, should we do more than one? And we ended up saying, let's do 3. And so the genesis of Color Creative was in 2014 when we decided that we were going to fund, produce, and develop these 3 half-hour comedy pilots by unknown creators, by unknown writers. And the whole idea was to say, we want to create a space that supports their voices, supports the work, and at the same time, hopefully creates access and opportunities, if not just for the projects to go and land in the traditional space, but just for their careers, right? Just to be able to get their work seen and heard, and create a pipeline of sorts. And so we couldn't get, I remember we shopped around, we tried to talk to some brands, we met with some people in Hollywood, and everyone was like, oh, that's so cute what you're doing.
That's nice.
Yeah, like no one wanted to play with this. And also our focus is on underrepresented voices, right? So we specifically look at women and minority writers and say, like, these are the most underserved voices in the traditional space. And so that's what our focus is. And I say that because 2014, this is before Oscar So White, before Me Too, before everyone, the coin word is diversity and inclusion, right? Before no one wanted to even like bat an eye about it. So Issa decided to self-fund it. And she was like, fuck it, I'm just going to spend my own money and we're going to go and make these pilots. And so we did. And that was what the birth was of the company. And I remember being like, what are we calling this? And Issa was like, oh, I like the name Color Creative. And so that's the name that stuck. And so I tell the origin story because since then, in 5 years, it really has evolved in more ways than one. I mean, the core of the mission has stayed the same, but we really look at ways to disrupt what we see as the traditional pillars of Hollywood that should not be there, right? And so one example is I had a friend at Columbia Studios who said, hey, do you guys want to come and do some work here? Because, you know, I'm tired of hearing all of my executives say they don't know where to find new voices of color in the feature film space, in the studio space. And I know that's a myth, and I know you guys know and have your pulse on other creators we should be looking at. Should we create a partnership? And so what we did is create this kind of production deal, it's a development production deal where we get to bring them 5 new voices who have original feature ideas, who are paid from the studio to develop that script, and we're producers who are helping to develop each project, and for 12 months, take them through the traditional studio system of developing a feature with the studio, with the potential commitment to get greenlit afterwards.
That's
and
awesome.
so it's a win-win for everyone. The studio looks great. We get to build a slate of 5 films with one place, non-exclusively, and also get to create, hopefully, a pipeline for 5 new voices to be in the studio space, right? And so
that's awesome.
And it's trying to craft like deals that were like, and people are like, how'd you make that happen? We're like, I don't know, we asked for it, we figured it out. Why do you guys think there's rules?
Traditionally.
No.
That.
Well, and I joke and I say, guys, the funny thing about Hollywood, the funniest thing to me is that when I look at these rules, I'm like, there's no governing laws of how to make films and TV. It's all just based off of what's the word? Not origin, but it's all based off of what's always been done, right? And the minute you try to challenge a system, it's okay to and if someone gives you permission, great. And if someone doesn't give you permission, you just try to do it anyways. And I think that's going to be the true kind of disruption that we're going to see in the Hollywood space, because we're just like, I don't know, we're just going to ask for it and we'll figure it out. So.
Well, I know you guys are all like, I mean, here at the office at Ben, we're huge fans of everything that you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm excited to see in 10 years, because we're going to be seeing a lot more disruption. We're going to be seeing a lot more change. I mean, we're seeing so much change right now that we can't really comprehend it.
No.
There's just so much going on.
I don't know where we're going to
There's so much content. There's millions of pieces of content being uploaded every day. We don't know what's gonna happen. But I know that you guys are going to be on top. You're going to continue just to keep being successful. And it's going to be fun to see where things are in like 10 years and the empire that you guys have built.
Thank you.
So it's going to be
exciting. I hope it's an empire.
I'm sure it is.
I hope so.
with how much time you guys have been in this space, and quickly going from like YouTube to like HBO. Like that's very impressive. It never happens.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of thing is going to be a consistent pattern.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these platforms are going to be much smarter, and the studios are going to be much more data driven to really empower people like yourselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to hopefully be the norm in the next 5 to 10 years.
Let's hope so. Like one would think, because they all want to be more inclusive, and we're like, guys, there's a lot of people over here
There's
on
a
the
lot
channel
going
that
on.
you're not looking at, who are creating great content and who have the voices you're looking for. But whether or not they'll do the work to help like shepherd them, develop them, that's the big question mark, right? Because the executives are kind of lazy and they don't want to do that work. So, yeah.
Exactly.
This is the truth.
She just speaks the truth.
I'll probably get no work after this.
It's okay. No one watches our podcast anyway.
It's still in the beginning phase. Hey, people watch it. There's just not a lot of people that watch it.
Oh, that's true. Well, thank you so much for coming
course,
on.
guys.
I really, really do appreciate it. I know it's been a great, discussion. The last question that we need to ask you is something that we ask all our guests. What do you see right now that's disrupting the industry that gets you to take a step back and says, this is where it's going in the future?
Oh, interesting. The first thing that popped into my mind, and this is up for debate for another episode, but I'm really interested in what the podcast space is doing for audio. And also not just audio, but I mean that in terms of music, in terms of scripted content, unscripted content, and where that's leading. And that's mostly because I've seen the rise of it in the last even 5 years, and it's only incrementally have gotten larger, right? And so that's probably the biggest disruption, because now we've seen it overlap into Hollywood with Homecoming and other scripted series based off of podcasts, Serial even. And just wondering what that space is going to look like, and whether it will converge or bleed over into others, whether it'll stay isolated and kind of be its own YouTube kind of space. So that's probably the most targeted disruption.
It's reverting back to radio.
Well, maybe.
Very much just like we're going backwards. Like
You're right. Like I think it's gonna continue to be just as prominent with video as it is with audio. But with us, I mean, even though we just started this podcast, we're seeing more traction, with audio.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I'm not as good looking as Derral.
Jump on a commute. It's easy. It's really easy to get on a commute.
We're radio people.
Is that hey?
Yeah, I'll speak for myself. But yeah, I think that is interesting to be something to watch. I personally think it's going to not just replace a lot of like talk show radio. I think that's been around for a while, but I think it is going to replace a lot of like the political commentators. I think a lot of it's going to be through podcasts, but I think it's going to continue to even improve from a production standpoint. Where people are going to be able to get more creative with how they film it, and I think it's going to eventually be a huge contender to late night.
Yeah, be very.
That's a very, very good point.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you
so
guys.
much,
I appreciate
Denise.
it. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Hey, you too. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, hold on one sec. I still gotta do the little outro.
Man, we're rusty today.
Wow. She's like, thank you, I'm out of here. Can you validate? I need validation. Thanks everyone for watching this podcast. Make sure you follow us, subscribe to us, whatever platform you're on. And we look forward to connecting with you again in our next episode next week.